2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
There's desperation and anguish.
More than 80,000 Afghans have since arrived in America, but this story is still unfolding. I'm Andrea Martin. In my new podcast, Stranger Becomes Neighbor, we'll find out what happens to these new arrivals in our communities. Who would help our newest neighbors? Follow us at kslpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.
In today's episode of Project Recovery,
immediately I was like, whoa, this is a whole new world I had no idea existed. I don't want to say like that hooked me and that made me a drug addict, but it just, opened my eyes to what was out there.
Make sure you listen to the end. Find us on Facebook at Project Recovery. We'll have that and much more coming up. Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. It's brought to you by our friends at useonlyasdirected.org. Hey, Matt, they got a new campaign. It's Know Your Script.
Yep, know your script, your prescription. Look it up. Do your research. Do your homework.
And it's not only that, it's also know the script. Know what you're going to say to your kids. Know what you're going to say to your doctor. Make sure you're going in
Have
and
some questions to ask.
Armed in with all the right information.
Right.
All right, so without useonlyasdirected.org, we wouldn't be able to bring you this podcast every week and inspiring stories. And I can tell you what, Dr. Matt, for the past week, I've been watching the news, and by the time this podcast comes out, I still don't think we're going to have any answers.
About who the next president will be?
About that and the state of affairs. And everything that I'm seeing on the news right now is that mental health is at an all-time high. People are stressed out. It is just absolutely insane, everything that 2020 has had to offer.
It's been a long year, lots of different big stressors. People certainly have the capacity to handle, stressful moments and stressful situations. But this year's been unique in the fact that as a country and as a world, we've had just kind of one big thing after another. And the longer they drag on unresolved, the more it's difficult for us to manage. So, the longer we go with COVID without an answer, the longer we go with the election without an answer, all these sorts of things cause chronic stress, and stress kind of the piggyback to stress is depression. So people are struggling right now. And, of course, that leads us into our topic, which is people want to escape. And sometimes using drugs and alcohol is the way they choose to do it. So that's up. Substance abuse is up all over the country.
Alcohol sales are up, relapse rates are up. And I saw something, where I get my information. I'm cruising around on
the Facebook.
Yep, and I follow a bunch
trusted news source.
Yeah, but I follow a bunch of recovery Facebook groups. Uh-huh. And there was this message, and it said, if you know somebody that's been battling with addiction and they go dark, meaning you haven't heard from them in about 3 to 4 weeks, and you finally hear from them, the first thing you should do is accuse them of relapsing. The first thing you should do is ask them if they're all right, and is there anything you can do to help them? Because I think so many times when you see people who are battling with addiction, it's so easy to judge. It's so easy to
Jump to conclusions, maybe?
Jump to conclusions. But maybe stop and ask them, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you? Because maybe the point you're hearing from them now is because they're looking for some help. And if you just accuse them and tell them how worthless they are, that you knew they were doing this, what are they going to do? More likely, they're not going to call you again, and they're going to go back out and use again.
Yeah. Well, people need support. We all need to feel validated and supported. And so I think that's just a good rule of thumb in general in life is never jump to conclusions, always offer support to people. And that's how you develop close relationships, is supporting each other. So right now you may be offering support to them, and maybe in the future they'll be offering support to you.
I think the great musician Neil Diamond,
one of the greats,
he's got a song called Brother Love. And between the parts of Brother Love, he breaks it down. And when I say he breaks it down, that means he starts to talk to you. And he says, you got one hand for help and the other hand to give help. And so that's what it's all about. I know I didn't do it justice.
No, that was deep. I didn't know we were going to get
That's
into
why we
Neil
got two
Diamond
hands.
today.
One hand to receive help and one hand to give help.
I love it.
Neil Diamond.
Hey, what Sweet Caroline. We always sing that at the Real Salt Lake games.
Well, I also DJ weddings, and that's a fan favorite.
That is a favorite. It's a fun one to sing along with.
Hey, our guest today is Cord Stimpson. And I said, Cord, how did you get that name? And you said?
No idea, man. Honestly, no idea. I think my mom just woke up in her sleep one night, and that was it.
But I've seen you now introduce yourself to 4 different people, and you always say Cord, like the extension.
Yep, extension. It's just the easiest way. There's so many things that sound like Cord that I just got to make sure they know.
Well, we're excited to have you today. You're filling in last minute, but your story is amazing. I know a little bit about it, but let's just get to the meat and potatoes of it. How did the story of Cord begin?
Well, born and raised in Ogden.
You know what we say there, the biggity-biggity-o.
The biggity, exactly. Yeah, I graduated from Bonneville High School 2010, so I'm 28 right now. I don't know, the story of Cord. Grew up playing every sport. Soccer was kind of my forte. Went and played high school soccer, went and played college soccer, I played in Wyoming for a little bit and then played at Weber State for 5 years. We won the national championship in 2011. Woo. And I was MVP of the tournament there. And then had a trial with Real Salt Lake. And that was kind of my thing, my plan for life. And my dad, looking back, I didn't have a backup plan. School was never my thing. I was smart enough to get it done. I never had any issue with school or anything, but soccer that's what I was doing.
You're putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Now, while you were in high school, in college, did you party at all, or were you more just, hey, I'm an athlete, this is what I do?
So, I was a good kid, as they say in quotations, up until the summer going into my senior year. So 17 is when I first experimented. And actually, the first thing I ever did was mushrooms, which is kind of weird, I guess, in the typical story of your...
Yeah, it's not usually the first, that's not the gateway drug.
No. And so, but immediately I was like, whoa, this is a whole new world I had no idea existed. And that, I don't want to say that hooked me and that made me a drug addict, but it just, opened my eyes to what was out there. So yeah, didn't mess around with anything until that summer, and then I started to, smoke pot and drink, and that's really where it started to get going.
Did you like that with mushrooms? A lot of people like that detachment, that hallucination, the feeling of unreality. Was that something that you were kind of searching for after that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I didn't understand how lost I was before, and just because I was raised so well. A lot of people say this, the world's best family, but they gave me everything I could possibly want. Big family. We were really close. I was raised in the church, but I didn't know that I had so many questions before that. And I guess it was such an eye-opening experience that I saw how much else was out there that it instantly grabbed me.
So when you say the church, you mean the LDS church, the Mormon church. Did you feel like that maybe you were sort of naive to the world or hadn't been exposed to lots and then...
Sheltered?
Sheltered.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the biggest thing was in that sheltered feeling, I guess, is I didn't know... you were always taught, don't hang out with these people. This is bad, this is bad, this is bad. You cannot do that. And then all of a sudden I started meeting other people that had different families that drank, and these kids, but I loved these kids, and they were good people to me.
Yeah, you realize that, drugs and alcohol don't make a person a bad person.
Exactly. And contrary to what I was taught all growing up. And so that's really what kind of sparked my interest, I guess you would say. And so then I started to fight everything I was taught. I was like, how dare you tell me that these people are bad? Because I like these people and I like hanging out with them and it's fun and their parents are nice to me, but they have a glass of wine at night, and how is that bad? And so that's really where rebellion, I guess you would say, came into it. And then I guess evidently I'm not the person that should have been rebellious.
So you put your mushroom water wings on and you floated around for a while, and then you took them off and you went just full bore. Yeah,
it didn't take much time. From the get-go, I liked everything. I got super heavy into smoking pot. I guess you would call me a stoner. Senior year,
But you still played sports. I mean, good enough to get a collegiate scholarship.
Yeah, super. I was, still competing at a high level. And then going into college, still doing the same things. I was still, when I first went to college, leading scorer, leading assister. But I was still doing all this stuff.
All of a sudden, you find yourself up in Wyoming, no parental guidance, and the blinders came off even more, I would say.
No rules, and I was not prepared even in the slightest to be off on my own. So I ended up actually flunking out. But at the same time, my dad was diagnosed with leukemia. So he had a bone marrow transplant in October of 2010. I think that's right. Yeah, 2010. So my first semester in Wyoming. And so that was kind of my excuse to come home. And I didn't want people to know that I flunked out of school. And so I would tell people I came home to take care of my dad.
So you just partied that first semester of college and didn't go to class, I guess.
No.
And didn't, so okay.
I don't
and that's not that uncommon of a story. I mean, a lot of kids their first year, they spend the next 3 years trying to make it up in their GPA because they aren't prepared, and it's, there aren't any rules and nobody's telling you to go to bed. And do you think it was just the drugs and alcohol that caused that first semester to be so difficult, or was it all the behavior and freedom as well?
Obviously the drugs and alcohol had a big part of it, but I didn't know how to manage my time. I didn't know how to how to get up on time for things, and if it wasn't soccer related, it didn't really matter
Because that's where all your eggs were.
Yeah, everything was put into it, and I was good at it.
What position did you play in soccer? That's my main question.
I played
center mid. Okay, so the center mid, for a lot of people, they don't know, that's sort of like the captain of the offense. You're organizing, and you have a lot of pressure on you if you're playing center mid on most squads. And
so And then my next question that I usually get when I tell them center mid, oh, you run a lot. And I said, no, I don't run ever.
I only run when chased.
Yeah, if you do it right, you don't have to.
Yeah, you're organizing, coordinating.
Yeah, I sit in the middle, I get the ball, I pass it off.
The wings are making the big runs, yeah.
Exactly. So, and that's probably why I could get away with drinking and drugging so much, is I just played my cards right on the field. And so I didn't
had to be smarter to get away with
the work. Hard.
The fatigue probably. Huh?
So you had a built-in excuse. You flunked out of college. Your dad was battling dealing with chemo, and came home. And you told everybody at home, "I'm just here to take care of my dad."
Yep.
And what was your mindset then? Were you trying to figure out how to get back into soccer, or what were you going to do with your life?
I always had the coach at Weber hitting me up because he knew I came home, and so I knew I was going to play again. And so I didn't have to work to get to playing soccer again. And I knew at this point that I was too old and my grades weren't going to give me a D1 scholarship. And so I knew that Weber was probably where I was going to play. So I wasn't willing to, really put myself out there and try to get a scholarship lined up to go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I did. I mean, there is some truth to taking care of my dad. Like, I did do a lot for him, and so I was home. Like, that was just the answer.
But you get a second crack at college. Do you do things different this time?
Not for a long time. So right when I came home, I didn't have a job, which was, I was taking care of my dad. I didn't have time for a job, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm telling myself. So I took care of him, and I was a ski bum. I mean, 2011, we had a crazy good winter, and I skied like 92 days. Wow. All I would do is wake up, take my dog, we'd go ski for a few hours, come home, take care of him, and then that was it. And then I would smoke and drink and do whatever with my friends. And then once the 2011 season started, I was a little bit better, I guess. I wasn't full-blown alcoholic or anything, and I guess I really wasn't until further down the road, until I went to rehab for it. But I was still smoking a ton, but still keeping it together, still playing really good soccer, and we won nationals.
But alcohol at first doesn't become your first DOC.
No.
So let's. How do we go into that?
Yeah, this is the meat and potatoes here.
How'd your dad do, by the way?
He is actually, we just celebrated 10 years
Good.
Post-transplant, and I guess you would say 7 years cured, I guess.
Cancer-free for 7 years.
Yep.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that.
He'll tell you he's on the right side of the grass.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Still doing well.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, thank you. But really, I mean, where my drug story starts is surgery, just like everyone else, I guess.
It's a pretty common story, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
What surgery were you having done?
First one was ankle. So in the 2011 season, I kept rolling my ankle over and over and over again. Then I had that trial with Real Salt Lake, and I blew it up. Just one final time. I didn't rehab like I should have. I wasn't in PT, and I would roll it, rest it for a couple days, and then go hard again. So it just got really bad, and I blew it up the last time, tore all my tendons and ligaments, and had surgery up in Park City. Before this, obviously, I was smoking and experimenting, I guess, but nothing to where you would say was hard drugs before this. Then I got introduced to pills, and immediately loved them.
You know, we've had a lot of people on the podcast, and they will talk about their first experience with an opioid. And do you remember yours?
Yeah. So I was obviously coming home from the surgery. I was all hopped up, and I felt good. I was super talkative with my mom. We stopped and got food, having a great time. I didn't have any pain. Like, it was fantastic. And I thought, there's no way I should feel this good after surgery. Got home, and I was in a lazy boy. My mom had a theater in her basement, and so I was just, basement was mine. Had a great place to game and to watch movies, whatever. Super comfy. Started to hurt. Got the pills, and immediately melted into my chair. It was like I became one with the lazy boy. And it's a feeling I'll never forget. To feel that relaxed and happy, really, if you want to chalk it up to one word.
And to think about, happy is something you shouldn't be feeling. You just got done with surgery.
Yeah.
You blew out your ankle at Real Salt Lake. Your dad, is in his fight, and happy shouldn't be something that's popping into your head.
No, yeah, life's not really going super good for me at this moment, but it is in that exact moment. So in retrospect, obviously, I should have seen something coming, and my parents should have seen something coming, but we didn't. But so, I mean, really, that's where my love for him began. I guess we should retract a little bit. In high school, I started hanging out with some kids that really brought me into the drug world, and I just continued to be with them. Like I said, they were really good kids. My parents liked them. I liked their parents. And so it wasn't anything to be scared of me. It wasn't anything to be nervous of.
I think when we're young, we're kind of taught that, people who use drugs and alcohol are scary people, that it's a dark, scary world, that they do bad things. And it's eye-opening when you find out that, well, just like anybody else, there's people that are fun and upbeat and happy and good, loyal friends who also use drugs and alcohol. So it can be kind of confusing for a kid to try to sort out the difference between a good friend and the drugs. And sometimes they just seem like they go together, and it makes everything feel like, oh, this is okay to be part of this because my friends are doing it too.
Yeah, so confusing to be taught that for so long, and then all of a sudden you're in the midst of it, and you're like, these aren't bad people, man. Like, Mom, do you not see what's going on? Mm-hmm. But she probably did a little bit more than me. Yeah, super confusing and just eye-opening, I guess. Now, it's 2020. I can see what was going on then. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't put any weight on my ankle for 12 weeks, which was extremely difficult for me. I'm already such a ramped up person all the time. I always have been. I've always been go and sit still, and then sitting for 12 weeks. The one thing, if I wasn't on them, I was ramped up and I wanted to stand. But if I took the pills, it relaxed me and melted me. And that was the most peaceful feeling.
12 weeks with opioids.
Yeah.
You're listening to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction, more importantly, about recovery. Cord Stimpson is our guest today. He's talking about his introduction into the opioid world. We're going to find out more about that in just a few seconds.
It's the story of an American held in a dark Venezuelan prison.
Then all of a sudden they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
I'm Becky Bruce. I spent a year working on Hope in Darkness, which now has more than 2 million downloads. Find it on kslpodcast.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
So after 12 weeks of sitting on the couch, melting into it, finding happiness in unhappy situations, once you're finally able to put weight on your ankle, what does that look like?
One of the best feelings ever. I mean, obviously I had to take it slow. I wasn't that stupid, but
you have that tendency to want to be on the go. And Casey, don't you think that, I mean, that's not that uncommon for people who, you either having or you have hyperactivity. There's that kind of pressured movement style that a person has, and using drugs and alcohol, especially opiates, can kind of be the first time in your life you feel chill and mellow, and that's just a common thing or theme, I guess. Don't you think, Casey?
Well, I'm curious to, after the 12 weeks and you can put some weight on your ankle, has anything crept into your brain that, hey, I think these pills might have a little bit of hold on me? Or did you think that you were going to be done with that and you would just move on normally and maybe go back to your recreational partying?
No, this is when I started to lie to myself. Because it's not like addiction was this thing I'd never heard of before, because I didn't know what it was. Still had that understanding that it wouldn't happen to me. But at the same time, I did know that I liked them too much, because I would ask my mom for more. And I would make up the excuse, my ankle still hurts, I'm walking, but it hurts going to school, yada, yada, yada. And
so your mom was playing gatekeeper, though, with the pills.
Yeah. To a certain extent. And I would pull some things out of a hat here and there to get more. And then they eventually ran out. Prescription, I couldn't get any more. And so I think that's really where the addiction came into play, because I knew I needed them, or I wanted them bad. And so I would start to pull more strings to get anything I could. Luckily, at that time, I had friends who knew how to get stuff. So that's really where Percocet got into play, but they're expensive and then not strong enough. And so I think really the big thing was Roxy's, Blues.
Mine was Bud Light.
Roxy,
which is also blue.
Yeah.
It is blue. Roxycodone. You would get, they're expensive. They're like $30 a pill, but it was more bang for your buck. They were amazing, right, at that time. So I think that's when full-blown addiction happened, when that got introduced. But that got expensive. And at this time, I'm in the typical addict behavior. And, from people that I would never think I would steal from. My family, my best friends. I was pawning guns, like heavy, heavy things that could have some really detrimental impacts on my life in order to pay for this.
And while you're doing all of this, has your family noticed a change in you? Have they started to question things that you do? Or are they still kind of naive to how bad the addiction has become?
Definitely still naive. I'm sure there were some questions about the way I looked, kind of things here and there that maybe were questionable, but I don't think that addiction was part of it.
Because I think there's a lot of family members, to my parents, Sam was like, not my kid. That happens to someone else's kid, not my kid, And it's the same thing that an addict says to himself. You've said it here now in this podcast. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen to me.
Right.
I know what it is, and I know what to look for. I'm a smart kid, but that's not what I have.
Yeah, but I'm Cord.
Yeah. Right.
Like, these pills don't know who I am.
Yeah.
It can't happen to me. But yeah, then we go through the typical addict story. Roxy's get introduced, get too expensive, heroin gets introduced. And
when you made the switch from Roxy's to heroin, was there a conversation in your head that took place?
I wish there was. I wish I could tell you there was, but I don't remember. I remember the first time I did it, but I don't remember myself thinking like, yo, that's heroin, dude. Like, let's think twice before we do this. Just for my sanity and my character, I wish that I could tell you, yes, I had that angel on the right, demon on the left conversation going on, but I don't remember that, which is scary that what I was taught was thrown out the window that quickly. And what I knew, I mean, the little that I did know of addiction, I did know about heroin, and that's not okay. But yeah, I did it.
Yeah, it's interesting because, pills are so much easier for most people to justify using, right? Because it's a pill and it comes from a pharmacy and a doctor prescribes it. And even if you're buying it off the street and buying it from your buddies or whatever, it feels like a little more legit. And I think people can lie to themselves and convince themselves more easily. But for heroin, I think there usually is that conversation. But for you, it was just a jump right in feeling, huh?
Mm-hmm. But I think, Dr. Matt, you said it best. I mean, it's not like I've heard this saying a lot, but if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig.
Right.
And in all intents and purposes, the pills are just as dangerous as heroin.
In some ways more because they are so easily justified in our brains. Denial and justification are powerful. We can convince ourselves of things that really aren't true. Like, this isn't a pig I'm kissing. It's a pretty girl, but it's just a pig.
Yeah, right.
Right? Yeah.
But you all of a sudden don't remember or know how you got into heroin. I mean, you don't remember the conversation.
Yeah, don't, at least with myself. I remember the conversation with the dealer that I was with, that this is cheaper, it's better. And yeah, I did it. And
now, you don't have to tell me, but I think people might find it interesting. Do most people, when they start heroin, they smoke it or do they go straight for intravenously?
I think most people smoke it. So that's one thing that I've extremely grateful for and lucky that I never shot up, because I do think that that's just.
I mean, that just brings a whole other level of it's health into it, you know. I mean,
so many other things that can go wrong. So yeah, I want to say that most people just start smoking it, but I do know a lot of people that do end up shooting up. But me, I smoked it, and when I say that I remember the first time I did opiates and I melted into the Ladyboy, that's not even comparable to the feeling I felt when I did heroin the first time. And it's kind of, you walk this line of I'm not trying to, what's the word we use?
Sensationalize?
Yeah.
To make it cool?
Yeah.
To sound, yeah.
Definitely not trying to do that. But it is on that other level. And it is that much stronger, but that much more dangerous.
Well, I think it's important to talk about it because, again, it's like, if you're taught things that aren't true growing up, like, bad people are the ones that use, drugs, so stay away from, and then you find out, well, good people end up using drugs or drinking as well. I mean, that it's the same thing. If you say, it wasn't a great experience in the moment, then we're lying to ourselves and lying to other people. There's a reason people drink. There's a reason people use drugs, because in that moment, at least temporarily, it does take you away to a different place. And especially if you connect with that particular drug, in the moment, it can be the sort of transcendent sort of experience, but it comes at this huge cost of addiction, and we know how the story plays out, but it's tempting for people because it's powerful.
Yeah, I think it's super important just to be upfront and honest about it. To me, there's no point in tiptoeing around. You can tell someone how great heroin is. You can tell someone how great meth is, but tiptoeing around it isn't going to help anybody. It's the same thing. My mom tells me going into my second surgery, shoulder surgery. My mom loves to tell this story. She thinks it's super powerful. But we're going through the pre-op, and my mom is saying, don't tell the doctor that you're a heroin addict or you were a heroin addict. Just tell him the pills make you sick or you're allergic to them or something like that. And I'm like, hell yeah, I don't have to tell this dude that I'm a drug addict? Like, sweet.
So what was your mom's reasoning for that? What?
She's ashamed. There's so much shame and guilt.
Okay. She wasn't worried you're going to get in trouble or reported?
No,
just the shame of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she knew that even if I got him, she wasn't going to give him to me. Like, that wasn't a question in our head.
But she was just trying to save the awkward conversation.
She's trying to save her little boy.
Yeah.
Her son from that shame and guilt.
And I don't want to break into your story with an ad, but that plays into our sponsorship of this thing is know your script. Go in there and have these conversations with the doctor. Had you told him that, I mean, I don't want to say things would be different, and because I don't know the whole story, but I mean, those are the things that you should be able to have the conversation with your doctor. I mean, there's so many people who don't want to have that conversation that go in there and get those going, I'm going to throw them away, and then don't end up throwing them away and then relapse. But if you go in there and go, hey, look, man, I've got a problem with these.
Well, we really tie our physicians' hands when we're not honest with them, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're having a problem, whatever kind it is, and you go in and lie to the doctor, I mean, they can't read your mind.
So what did doctors say when you said that you're allergic to them or whatever?
Okay, I just said I just want Advil. I just want ibuprofen, and that was that. He thought I was this tough kid that that knew the
dangers
chances,
or perils.
Yeah, the chances of addiction or the dangers of opiates, and it was almost like I was being applauded. But like we said before, it's not helping anyone, and you never know what that doctor's going through. I mean, if I was upfront and honest and be like, listen, dude, I've been through recovery. I'm an addict. Chances are that doctor isn't.
We've had a couple on the show that were.
But yeah, what if he is? What if his son's going through the same shit?
So I feel like we've jumped up a little bit because we're talking to your second surgery.
Yeah.
When you were doing the heroin and you took it for the first time and you said you just smoked it, how long did you run with that for?
I want to say that I was using and when I was using heavily from the get-go, and it ended up being, it was like $100 a day, probably for 9 months, something like that.
So they knew you at all the pawn shops in Ogden then. Huh?
Oh yeah, and I remember one
it's hard
time,
to keep. That's an expensive habit.
Oh yeah,
right? Yeah.
And so I ran through way too much money, way too much pawning, and at this time I met my girlfriend, and so I was with her, and we were living together on and off, whatever, and things were getting really bad. They were really good.
Between the two of you?
Yeah, really good and then really bad. And I was so good at manipulation and lying that they were, I was able to keep it together with her, but I was using this entire time.
And she didn't use?
No. So
when did that come to a crashing end?
The night I got caught. I don't remember the night, what date or anything like that, but I do remember we were house sitting, me and Chancey were house sitting for a friend of ours. And it's like 3:30 in the morning, and this pounding on the door, and I'm freaking out. It's not my house. I don't know who could be knocking on these people's door. Open it up, and it's my mom and dad. And obviously, I'm terrified, don't know what's going on, and my stepdad shows me, he found my tinfoil, lighter, straw, and black stuff all over the tinfoil. And obviously, right off the get-go, I lie.
That's what we do first.
Yeah. It's just second nature at that point. But obviously, there's no getting out of that. And it was by far the best moment of my life. As hard as it was to be caught doing something like that, for the longest time before that, I knew that I was in so deep and losing trust in so many people, causing fights with my loved ones, stealing from them, doing all these things that I knew weren't morally right. My character was hurting. My ethics were thrown out the window. For the longest time, I knew I was doing this thing that just was not okay. And yeah, like I said, it was the best night of my life.
Did you sort of building up to that? Did you sort of feel like, but I'm out of control, and if somebody doesn't catch me, eventually I'm not going to stop? Or did you look at being caught as sort of like being saved, or were you angry that you were caught?
Definitely looked at it as being saved because I knew that I couldn't do it. I couldn't stop. Like, I was doing things that I shouldn't be doing.
But the addict brain takes over.
Right.
And you want to get what you need.
Yeah, I needed it.
So you felt a little bit of relief.
Oh, absolutely.
When they did that.
And leading up to that, like, I still had that ego about me that I'm Cord. Like, I can stop this anytime I want.
Mm-hmm. I think everybody has that in some way. And, man, that gets us in more trouble in life, just that ego that we have. It's part of our success, and it's definitely part of our failure.
So they're pounding on the door at 3 a.m., you're babysitting, you're house sitting someone's house, and they go, hey, I think it's time for rehab.
I want to know what kind of lie you came up with, though, because he's got it right in his hand. Like, I want to hear the lie.
What is that,
That
Steve?
must be pretty good.
What are you doing?
Steve, I can't believe it.
Yeah, I wish I could remember what exactly I said. Maybe they do. I'll ask them and call you.
Okay, because those are my favorite. The lies when you're just caught Blake and people still try to lie. They're usually kind of funny after the fact.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that was the beginning of Cord again, I guess you would say. At least so I thought. But so then I had that next day, it was all basically telling everyone. Mom and stepdad already knew, told my dad. Chancey obviously knew. Then that next day I had an indoor soccer game, and I had super long hair. And I ended up that very next day, I cut it all off. I cut like 17 inches off my hair. Went to my indoor soccer game. Nobody knew who I was because I looked so different. And my sister was there. And I don't know what it was that made her so difficult to tell, but she was probably the one that was the hardest to tell besides my grandfather and my uncle. But I remember taking her out to the car and saying, listen, I got to talk to you. And she is just her normal, happy self. And then the moment that I said, I'm addicted to heroin, I'd never seen anyone look like that. I didn't know I had the power to make somebody that sad. Which is super cool, really. Manifesto to my family that I can do something like that and still see no sign of hatred or judgment or anything like that coming from somebody. To just feel nothing but love was it was really cool, and I saw that from all my family members.
Well, even her sadness though is a manifestation of that love, right? You can't really feel that sad if you don't feel that much love for someone.
Right.
Do you remember what she said?
Yeah, she said, I knew something was wrong. And I think they were lying to themselves for a long time. They didn't know heroin. And I think that was the biggest gut check. But yeah, she said, I knew something was going on, and I'm so relieved. And obviously I was relieved, but it was, man, it sucked.
I remember that relief when I told all my family and friends. It felt like the weight of the world was off my shoulders. They were all in on the secret now.
Yeah.
And the reality was, it wasn't a big secret.
No, you think you're so smart. You think you're so damn smart getting away with everything. But, I mean, I don't know what the timeline is when people start to know something's going on. But, like, Hawk talks about it all the time. He's like, people like me at parties. I'm the life of the party. But really, you're, like, sitting in the corner, like, being all weird. You're dilated, and you think for some reason that you're holding this together really well. And
we're not.
No.
So you end up telling the family, and you admit that you need help?
Yeah. In my head, I had known for a long time that this wasn't okay. And so when they told me you can't do heroin anymore, it's not like I knew that I couldn't be like, well, guys, come on. Like, just a little bit. You know, it's not something you can be like.
You're not going to compromise.
No. Be like, yeah, okay, you're probably right. I probably shouldn't be doing heroin. So, yeah, and that's when Hawk gets introduced, Dustin Hawkins.
From the SOAR program up in Ogden.
Yeah. I mean, I can attest my life to him, really. He's like an older brother to me. He's my coach, my mentor. I learned everything that I know and everything I teach now from him.
School of Addiction Recovery.
Yeah.
Formerly known as WAR, but rebranded to SOAR now.
Yeah. And we've had him and a couple of people on from his program, and people really seem to enjoy it, and they get great success out of it. So how long do you do for heroin, the SOAR program, or WAR when it was?
So I hit it hard in the gym with Hawk for probably a year. Got fit and was still playing soccer at this point. Cold turkey, just quit heroin with him. And I loved the gym aspect. I loved Olympic weightlifting, getting stronger, because that's just who I am. It's athletic based, and I fell in love with it. But I didn't go all in on the program. I didn't do 100% of the spiritual work that we do. I wasn't mentally prepared. I was still naive about who I was and what was really going on in my life. So I continued to drink. I quit drugs. I wrapped heroin in with substances except drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So even marijuana, you were done with that?
Yep. Quit smoking. I quit everything.
You know, for me, it was always easy way to do that was legal, illegal.
Right.
You know, and that's a way to, to justify it. You know, I mean, when I was in recovery for, the 45 days at Pinnacle, I was like, I'm in here for a legal substance. I mean, I remember calling my mom and going, hey, there's people in here for meth and heroin. I'm in here for Bud Light. I don't know if this is the right place. She was like,
I'm good.
Shut up. You're supposed to be there. And I was like, okay, know, but that's where a lot of people will draw a line. Legal, illegal.
Oh, 100% what I did. So socially acceptable. I mean, if I walk out of a store with a bag of heroin, something's going to happen. But if I walk out of the store with a brown paper bag
or a 12-pack,
yeah, people are like, he's going to have a good night.
Yeah, right.
So
it's crazy, but
yeah. In my head, it's kind of like, how is this isn't bad.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm still thinking I'm Cord. Like, I'm still untouchable. And at this point, quitting heroin was almost like, look what I did.
I was going to say, I bet that just reinforced that I'm Cord attitude.
Yeah.
Because you're like, heroin, it's horrible, but I quit it cold turkey, and look at me now. And,
yep.
Right? So it kind of reinforces that invincibility that we lie to ourselves that we have.
Oh, yeah. 100% what I did. So kept drinking.
We're going to make you stop right there because that was your first run through of the SOAR WAR program up in Ogden. We're going to find out about his second. You're listening to Project Recovery right here on the Project Recovery podcast. Welcome back to Project Recovery. Our guest today is Cord Stimpson with a P. He just talked about how he quit cold turkey heroin with the help of Dustin Hawks at the SOAR and WAR program up in Ogden. But he didn't quit everything. You thought that you could still handle alcohol or drink like a gentleman, as people would say. Were you drinking like a gentleman?
No, there's not much gentlemanly about me, to be honest.
You seem like an intense guy, and I think that's another story that we hear a lot is, you're probably, would you characterize yourself as an intense person who's kind of all in when he does stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. No matter what it is, I'm not going to do it if I don't do it full bore.
But that's kind of characteristic of most addicts.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because it's a double-edged sword. It's characteristic of extremely successful people, right? And of people who become addicted.
And we're going to get back into Cord's drinking here in just a second. But something that's really resonating with me is that he keeps saying, but I'm Cord. I'm Cord.
Yeah?
I often said that.
You said Cord?
No, I said, but I'm Casey.
You're C-Money. I'm C-Money.
Things usually work out for me.
Right.
I can talk my way out of this.
And I will attest to the fact that I've known you long enough to say things almost always do work out for you until they didn't.
Until they don't.
Yeah.
And so you think that you can handle drinking? Or so let me ask you this: you go through the war, the SOAR program, you quit the heroin cold turkey. What are your parents thinking about you now and your friends and family?
Oh, I'm a hero
because you quit heroin.
Mm-hmm.
And so, did they kind of give you a pass on the drinking, or did they kind of say
no? Drinking, which is funny because I still had to hide that. And so if you look at it, that should probably tell me that I shouldn't be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I knew I shouldn't be doing it because my parents didn't want me to. And so that's why I was hiding it. I wasn't hiding it for the sake of drinking. I was hiding it so my parents wouldn't find out because they would be disappointed in me.
Mm-hmm.
Because they still had that belief that people that drank weren't as good or bad people or whatever you want to say. And I think that was heightened by my heroin experience, that drinking was just going to be that same thing.
Did your parents, and I know your mom, but do you think they were ever like, see, we told you about drugs. We told you about this, and you told me they were all right, and look where it left you. If you would have listened to us, none of that would have ever happened.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure they did. It never came out like that. Like, we were right, you were wrong. You need to listen to us all the time now.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing like that, but I'm sure it was some of that.
Because I
thinking.
think parents do, in a way, try to protect, and you even say shelter our kids, because we've experienced things, we know things, but there's probably a better way to communicate with our kids than rather just do it black or white.
Right.
You know? But
the problem is we usually are correct. I mean, most of the time parents are right. But you're right. How we deliver that message can be confusing or even create oppositionality in the kid. The kid might be like, oh, you tell me not to do it, I'm going to do it. So how we deliver the message is important. Sounds like your parents were very loving and supportive
Sounds
of
amazing.
you. Do you think you needed more of a kick in the pants? Would that have helped you out if they'd have been a little more strict or controlling, or would that have pushed you farther away?
I think it would have pushed me further away because there was that sense of controlling. I mean, I was back living with them at that point. Car got taken away. I didn't have any money. I would get like an allowance per month to go eat with Hawk, but that's really all I had. And so I think that made me mad a lot of the time, and so I would find other avenues to do other things. I wish I could give you an answer on how to handle your kids if they're doing there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
No. And I think probably an open conversation and really talking and getting to know your kids and finding out more about the situation rather than just simply saying, because I'm your parents. And I think that's a lot of us do. It's just because I told you.
Yeah. I think in addition to that, the main advice I would give parents would be get some support and help for yourself so that you can learn how to not enable your drug-addicted child, because I think you want to always show love and you always want to show support, and I think you want to be honest. But the biggest mistake parents make is they continue to enable their kids' behavior, and I think most parents would need help to not do that.
Because they only know what they know. And what we said on this podcast is there needs to be an education for everybody involved, not just the addict, but the loved ones of addicts, and knowing exactly the boundaries and where to go and what to do. So you're drinking. How long do you keep drinking for?
Oh, I'm trying to put time together here. I'm not a counter. A lot of people are.
Yeah.
Like, they've got it on their phone, how many days they have clean and everything. I was never that. I've never, like, just the other night in a meeting we had at SOAR, I said my sobriety date wrong. Like, I don't know why, but I don't pay attention.
Well,
to that
mine is because there's a mugshot that coincides with it. So mine's easy to remember.
Right.
But I really don't know. I mean, sometimes I'll go, I got this many. I don't know. And the only reason I know the date is because that's when the accident happened. But other than that, I don't put too much thought into it either, because I'm more about living and being present. And so that's kind of my deal. So I get that. But you start drinking, and does Hawk say anything to you about your drinking, or does he know? Are you hiding it from him?
So I stopped going to war for a while. I just kind of teetered off because I was drinking, and that wasn't my number one thing. Partying with my friends was and drinking with my friends was my number one thing.
Were you drinking every day?
No, not at this point. But shortly after, yes. So I'm trying to think, like, this November will be 6 years clean and sober from any drug. And then this December will be 4 years drinking.
So you had a two-year run with alcohol.
Yeah. And then I want to say probably the last, I guess it's more, probably the last year and a half was where it really got bad, drinking every day.
What does that look like?
So me and my girlfriend were living up in Ogden together, and I was an electrician, and I was drinking every day, but not at work. But that's all I thought about. When I get home, I can have another drink. And she was okay with me drinking at home because she didn't know how big of a deal it was, because I was so good at grabbing a beer out of the fridge and then going to do my laundry in the basement where I had bottles that she didn't know about hidden, And so for a while there, it was fine until it wasn't. And then until I actually left my girlfriend and moved to Salt Lake. And that's really when it got bad. I moved in with a bunch of buddies, and it was just nothing but a bachelor pad. And they're normies, as we call them in the recovery world. They can drink and be fine and go to work in the morning. But I got to a point where, in order to go to work in the morning, I had to drink. You had that feeling of waking up. I couldn't go to bed unless I had this amount to drink, and then I could sleep. And then waking up in the morning, you're not sober, but you're not drunk enough to do anything. And so I had to drink more immediately. Bottle of tequila on my nightstand. As soon as I wake up in the morning, first thing I do is drink to stop shaking, in order to do something that you can't legally do drunk, in order to drive to work. I don't know how I never got a DUI. I remember one time I got pulled over and got out of it. Like, did the whole sobriety test on the side of the freeway. He said, "I can smell alcohol. Have you been drinking?" I said, "Yes, I have been." I guess honesty is the best policy. But told him yes. Took me out, did the test, and then he said, "All right, like I think you're good to go, but would you blow for me just for kicks and giggles?" And I remember asking him, I was like, "If I blow over, are you going to arrest me?" And he said, "No." And I remember recording the message and having him say, "No, I won't arrest you." Blow, and I'm like 0.23 or something like that.
Wow.
Like, not okay.
0.08 is, 0.05.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like, "You need to get off the road." So he let me pull my car off the next exit, follow me off the next exit, park it, call my buddy. Buddy comes and picks me up.
Wow.
That's unbelievable.
So, and that was further down the line of when the time was getting closer that I went back in.
So what was the boiling point? What made you go back in?
So living down in Salt Lake, I was running out of money, doing anything I could to get rent money to just stay away from the embarrassment of telling my buddies that I couldn't pay rent anymore. But it did get to a point where they like sat me down and then were like, "Yo, we need to make some other plans." And I said, "You're right." Super embarrassing. It sucked. But I said, "You're right. I'll move out." Luckily, they had a dude that could move in right after me, so it was pretty seamless for them. Moved back up to my dad's house in Ogden, and everything is just falling apart. Still in love with my girlfriend, but I was too egotistical and too big of a man, and proud to call her and admit I was wrong and make things work. But back in Ogden with my dad, no money, and I remember driving to the liquor store. And this is November. Now I remember this is December 21st. Driving to the liquor store because I'm making plans in my head like, okay, the liquor store is going to be closed over the holidays. I got to get enough money together to get enough liquor to get through the holidays.
The 26th.
Yep. So I somehow scrape up enough money to go get a bunch of the cheapest liquor I can find. the liquor store, and I slam on my brakes in the middle of Harrison Boulevard, or Washington Boulevard. In the middle of traffic, someone overtakes me, slam on the brakes, and I start to scream, pull out my phone, call my dad, and I say, I need help. And that was when, like I said earlier, that's when Cord started again, but this is really where my story started again. And the same exact thing happened with heroin. There was nothing but love and relief from my parents, and my family. Everyone was, relieved because they knew something else was going on. I still wasn't Cord after I quit heroin. I still, wasn't just back to me. But this time, shortly after they saw me, telling everyone just saw something different in my eye. And that was the moment that I knew that I'm done.
So you called your old friend Hawk again?
Called Hawk.
What'd he say?
Dumbass. Said, let's go to work. And he can attest to this. He tells me all the time like that. He knew that I was different that time. I was ready to go all in. And I did go all in. One of the darkest days of my life was him dropping me off at Sober Living. He told me that I needed to go do this, and it was the absolute last thing I wanted to do because I'm in a good place. I'm at my mom and dad's house. They're not going to let me do anything. I'm 100% in. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to use. I'm doing whatever you guys tell me. Their house is safe, but he still wanted me to go to Sober Living. So I pack up. I go to Sober Living, and I'm not a meeting person, but I did the meetings. I went to war every day, and I did the spiritual work. We went, all the hikes and the reading and the writing and the gratitude and the diligence, all these pieces we put together. I was 100% in and did everything that I remember he said, you need to do exactly what I'm doing to me. And so I literally followed Hawk around like a little puppy, and I did what Hawk did, and eventually got out of Sober Living. And that's really where, called Chancey, and luckily, she's my saving grace. Luckily, she only beat me up a little bit and, kicked my ass here and there, and took me back. Now, here we are, really.
What are you doing to give back?
Throwing that ego away. Humbling myself, saying you're right, I'm wrong, and realizing how much trust was actually lost in everyone that I was around, specifically her, my parents, my uncle, my grandpa, and realizing how much work was to be done to get that back, and really realizing what I really wanted.
Do you have the trust back?
I would like to think so now.
But you're working with Dustin. You're running some groups during the week, and then you're also working with kids with a great program up in Ogden called Cross. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
So at this point, I like to say that being a drug addict and alcoholic were the best thing that ever happened to me.
Crazy to say that, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not something that, should be said, I guess. It doesn't make sense. But it's formed or shaped the man I am today, and it's a passion of mine now to teach others what I know. I began just getting small jobs like at Sportsman's Warehouse just to make a little bit of money and then get some sober time, continuing with SOAR. But then eventually called a buddy, called a buddy of mine that is a manager at Crossroads, and he was like, yeah, you got a job. Let's go. Started the next day, and it's been amazing ever since.
Tell us about that program.
So Crossroads Academy, we've got 3 houses up in the Ogden area, and we bring kids from all over the country. None in Utah, actually, just because it gets a little messy, I guess, with parents and everything if you're too close. But all over the country, kids come in, and from drug addiction to anxiety, depression disorders. We mainly deal with substance issues. Not to say that all of them are full-blown addicts yet, but a lot on the preventative side.
This is a residential treatment program.
Mm-hmm. They live there
and heavy on mental health, and then these kids usually have a substance use problem as well.
Yeah, a little background at least in some substance use. But every house has 2 therapists. They've all got their master's degrees, and each kid has one-on-one time with the therapist, and then staff is at the house 24/7. So they've always got somebody to talk to, and Crossroads is amazing with what we do outside of the therapy.
They go skiing, they go wakeboarding, they go golfing, they go climbing, which, it sounds like a resort. But from what I know about recovery, it gives them something to do and look forward to and find that passion and that love again and connecting with nature and being one with yourself and doing that. I say a lot of times, the hardest part for me when I came out of Pinnacle Recovery was going back to the golf course, because the golf course is where I love to drink, and I turned it into a bar. And I was afraid I wasn't going to love golf as much as I thought I did.
Well, we talk about that all the time, specifically in Hawk.
I didn't know softball sober was a thing.
Yeah,
I was like, you guys are doing this sober?
There's a reason it's called beer league.
Yeah, right. But those are things that are important to get back to having fun and not using the aid of substance or alcohol,
which is super difficult.
Yes,
but Crossroads does a really good job at hiring recovering addicts like myself. I've got a bunch of coworkers that have gone through the same thing as me, and we're really, really relatable with the boys. And so when we go and do these things and the staff themselves are having fun doing these things, they're like, holy, this is possible.
And they know your pedigree of coming from addiction.
Yeah, I can share my story with them and they can resonate with it and then have fun with us. And then all of a sudden at the end of the day, I'll sit and look at a kid and be like, hey, you we're sober right now, right? And it's almost like this aha moment to them. And I mean, obviously it doesn't happen all the time, but that's the beauty of this work, and where I find the passion is you can find this little innocent kid that's really never done anything wrong, just screwed up a little bit in his life and thinks that this is the end of his life, and then you can see this change. It's just magnificent to see. It's crazy.
Well, it's magnificent to see where you've been and where you're going. So I want to say thank you. Dr. Matt, any thoughts on today's episode?
I appreciate you coming in last minute and sharing your story. I mean, I'm just always glad to be part of this show, because I get to be part of someone like you coming in and helping other people. Like, that's the help. And somebody myself who works with teens a lot, I really appreciate the work you guys do at Crossroads, because not only is that an aha moment for a kid and a life changer, but it's a life changer at a developmental period they're so impressionable, and that can just put them on a healthy road for the rest of their lives in a way that us older people, we still need that too. But when you work with kids in that developmental time, it's just so powerful. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing is working with kids. It's more preventative than it is trying to teach a 40-year-old how to lift weights when he's been on heroin for 20 years or whatever. But that's why we do what we do at SOAR. And then I actually started my own business called Tyche, Tyche. And so I work directly with one-on kids, clients, and then I have my group of kids that we get together, and it's not as one-on-one based, not as often, but yeah, dude, it's my calling now, man.
I love it, man. I love your passion, and I love your story. Thanks for stopping by today. And thanks to everybody for tuning in to Project Recovery, brought to you by our friends at useonlyasdirected.org. With their new campaign, it's Know Your Script. When talking to yourself, when talking to your doctor, just find out more about what you're going to get yourself into. Thank you very much. Project Recovery is a KSL podcast.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.
It's the story of an American held in a dark Venezuelan prison.
Then all of a sudden they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
I'm Becky Bruce. I spent a year working on Hope in Darkness, which now has more than 2 million downloads. Find it on kslpodcast.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.